All right, this is going to be a wild one. Welcome back to Lights Over Loveland. Today, we are not talking about theories. We are talking about cold, hard, declassified truths that were just shared on Capitol Hill. June 30th, 2026, the Task Force on Declassified Federal Secrets held a bombshell hearing on Project MKUltra. Now, if you think MKUltra is just ancient history from the 1970s church committees, you're dead wrong. This hearing put a magnifying glass on the sheer scale of crimes that were committed by the American government on American citizens on American soil for over 20 years. We heard incredible testimony from investigative journalist Tom O'Neill and historian Stephen Kinzer. And while the mainstream media may try to bury this or focus on political infighting, we are stripping away the noise and looking at the real story. The story of how our government spent billions of dollars to weaponize the human mind. Let's look at the baseline that was established today, and I am going to be reading off a script so I make sure I get all of my facts correct. In January 1973, right before CIA Director Richard Helms left office, he ordered a literal bonfire of federal records. He called up Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the chief chemist and architect of MKUltra, and told him to burn everything. 4 people spent an entire day tearing and burning 152 files. And now think about this. We've been getting the UFO files released now, and one file may contain hundreds of pages. So who knows how much they just destroyed when they burned all this. You're talking 152 files that may have had 300 documents in each one of them. Now, why did they do this? They did this because they knew that they committed crimes against humanity. The only reason we know anything today is because of a total fluke that happened in 1977. An archivist fulfilling a Freedom of Information Act, a FIFO request, stumbled upon 7 misfiled boxes of financial records that escaped the fire. Those 7 boxes revealed a massive nightmare. At least 149 sub-projects operating across more than 80 institutions, including major universities, prisons, and hospitals, involving 185 non-government researchers. They even covertly funded a hospital safehouse wing to use unknowing patients as lab rats. Now, you may be wondering, what's the point of them doing all this? So what was the actual objective? Stephen Kinzer, author of Poisoner in Chief, spelled it out clearly today. Sidney Gottlieb believed that if you want to implant a new mind or new programming into a human being, you first have to completely destroy the mind that is already in there. They weren't just looking for a truth serum to make spies talk. They were looking for a way to break the human soul apart, strip away your identity, and build a completely synthetic one from scratch. Disclaimer: the things that we are going to talk about in this video are deeply disturbing, but they are our history, and we are trying to discover the truth of what happened, what our government discovered, and how we can bring peace to these horrible crimes that were committed on humanity. Let's talk about how they did this now, because this is where the esoteric meets the horrific. The testimony today highlighted how they used heavy doses of psychedelic compounds such as mescaline and LSD, combined with prolonged hypnosis and sensory deprivation. The goal of the mescaline and isolation was to force the subject into a state of acute disassociation. They shattered the ego and cut the conscious mind off from its regular timeline, its reality, and its defense mechanisms. Once the subject was completely unanchored, hovering in that deep, empty space of subconscious, the CI handlers would step in with hypnosis to program them. And I also think, after hearing things in this hearing and things I've learned on a different podcast, which we're going to dive into, I think they were also using other substances once they had these people in these deep psychedelic trances. I don't think the psychedelics are what caused the problem. It was the brainwashing with, I believe, amphetamines to induce violence. And yeah, I'm going to explain why I believe that, and I'm going to show you some of the connections that I was able to come up with. Now, when you hear the mechanisms described, it should sound incredibly familiar to anyone who explores spiritual practices, deep meditation, or astral projection. Think about it. Why do we sit in meditation or practice astral projection? We purposely quiet the physical senses. We enter a relaxed, altered, receptive state. We step past the ego and access the vast, deep landscape of our subconscious mind. But look at the profound cosmic difference in intent. This is why intent is so important. And that's why I believe consciousness, like the way that you put your energy out, is going to be the key to how your reality is created for you. So if you're using it in a loving way, like I'm trying to do, I think we get these beautiful magical experiences. When you try to weaponize that, you get these horrible, messed up things that we're about to dive into. When we enter that sacred space through spiritual practice, the goal is sovereignty. The goal is expansion, healing, connecting with higher intelligence, and instilling absolute love and cosmic unity into our subconscious. The CIA took that exact same sacred gateway, the deeply receptive, unanchored state of the human spirit, and inverted it. They weaponized it. Instead of love, they used force, trauma, fear, and psychological violence to turn the subconscious into a prison cell. They turned a spiritual tool of liberation into a weapon of their own control. Which brings us to the most explosive part of today's hearing, the testimony of investigative journalist Tom O'Neill, author of Chaos. O'Neill spent over 20 years pulling a thread that started with the Manson family murders and led directly into the heart of the CIA. O'Neill testified under oath that he discovered a needle in a haystack inside UCLA's most influential psychiatrist in American history, Dr. Jolly West. In his very first letter to the CIA, West proposed running experiments on unknowing military personnel, prisoners, and psychiatric patients using LSD and hypnosis to extract information, implant false memories, and get this, completely switch the allegiance of previously loyal individuals. Gottlieb wrote back calling West his good friend and praising his perfect grasp of what the CIA was after. And that was made very clear in the hearing. Just absolutely so messed up when you hear that Gottlieb wrote back calling West his good friend and praising his perfect grasp of what the CIA was after. Fast forward to 1967 in San Francisco. Charles Manson is released from prison as a barely literate ex-con. He moves to the Haight-Ashbury district and suddenly transforms into a hyper-charismatic cult leader capable of persuading ordinary kids to commit brutal murders on command. O'Neill provided today that Manson and his followers were getting free medical care at a clinic where Dr. Jolly West had set up his base of operations to study group behavior, amphetamines, and compliance. Manson was operating right under the watchful eye of a federal parole officer who was working directly alongside CIA's top mind control researcher. There's those amphetamines. It gets even deeper and more disturbing. After President John F. Kennedy was assassinated and Lee Harvey Oswald was shot on live television by Jack Ruby, who do you think was inserted into Jack Ruby's prison cell to conduct a solo psychiatric evaluation? Dr. Jolly West. West examined Ruby completely alone. No other doctors present. He emerged from that cell and announced to the world that Ruby had suffered an acute, irreversible psychotic break. From that moment on, Ruby's public testimony to the Warren Commission was a babbling, incoherent mess about people cutting off children's limbs. Remember, A year before the Kennedy assassination, Dr. West had publicly boasted about his ability to use LSD to induce permanent psychiatric breaks and psychosis in human beings. And who was running the Warren Commission? Allen Dulles, the very CIA director who authorized MKUltra in the first place. The liaison feeding information to the commissioner was Richard Helms, West's direct supervisor. The tentacles of weaponized mind control run straight through the biggest historical cover-up of the 20th century. During the questioning, Representative Anna Paulina Luna pushed the witnesses on where the terrifying protocols came from. The answer takes us back 80 years to the aftermath of World War II and Operation Paperclip. The CIA and U.S. military brought over 1,600 Nazi scientists into our government. Stephen Kinzer confirmed today that people like Kurt Blome, the chief biological weapons for the Nazi government, and Walter Schreiber, the Surgeon General of the Nazi army, were put on the payroll. These men had spent years conducting horrific experiments on human beings in concentration camps, specifically using mescaline, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, to see if they could shatter the human will. And once again, I think they're also using amphetamines. We're going to get into now why I think there's a connection with amphetamines and this mind control. Amphetamines connect perfectly to the testimony from today. I heard a podcast discussing the historical research uncovered in the book Blitzed by Norman Ohler. According to Ohler, during World War II, the Nazis didn't just use meth, they militarized it. It kept them awake for days, suppressed their fear, and critically, it radically heightened their aggression and their violence. When you tie in that Nazi history back into what Tom O'Neill testified about today, it clicks together in a horrifying way. If you want to know what kind of chemical cocktail the CIA was using to force these states, we have to look at the blueprint they created in Nazi Germany. During World War II, the German military manufactured a drug called Pervectin. It was pure methamphetamine. They fed 35 million doses to their soldiers to fuel the Blitzkrieg. It kept them awake for days, completely suppressed their natural human fear, and artificially triggered the violent, aggressive centers of the root brain. Even Hitler himself was a meth addict, receiving daily experimental injections of meth and cocaine from his personal doctor, Theodore Morell. The Nazis proved that if you flood the brain with methamphetamines, you can weaponize human aggression. Now bring that back to Charles Manson. Investigative journalist Tom O'Neill uncovered that the federal parole officer who was protecting Manson in San Francisco wasn't just a parole officer. He was the head of the amphetamine research project at the exact same clinic where the CIA's top mind-controlled doctor, Jolly West, was operating. They were studying how to combine the hyper-violent paranoia of amphetamines with deep hypnotic trance to program human beings. That's my opinion. The CIA took these Nazi tactics, ignored the Nuremberg Code entirely, and set up secret prisons. Kinzer testified that he tracked down what might be the very first CIA black site, a chalet in Germany where MKUltra officers worked side by side with Nazi scientists in the basement, conducting the same exact gruesome, lethal experiments on expendables, human beings snatched off the streets who wouldn't be missed. And during the hearing, he also said that he has heard from witnesses around the neighborhood of that house that the bodies of those victims are buried on the property, and he advised Congress to get in touch with the German government. They brought these tactics back home too. We heard testimony about Operation Midnight Climax, which is just the most insane thing. This name cracks me up because this whole operation is so messed up, but these names are just so, oh my God. In San Francisco and New York, where the CIA set up fake brothels, used prostitutes to lure ordinary American citizens in, dosed them with LSD without their knowing, and filmed them behind one-way mirrors. As Kinzer noted, there was absolutely zero scientific merit for this and was overseen by handlers that were completely outside the law. Now, you may be wondering, how did they hide the money? They used these things called cutouts. They used the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, elite Ivy League universities, and foreign aid covers like USAID, and they diverted funding meant for humanitarian relief to bankroll black operations, biological warfare, and psychological torture. These were crimes committed in the most horrific ways against the American population using our own tax dollars that were meant to help people, and instead were used to torture and psychologically break and manipulate people into their own mind-bending ways to go out and commit gruesome murders and do whatever they deemed as the greater good. So now, let's tie it all up into the 80-year secret we talk about constantly on this channel, the UAP cover-up. The most staggering piece of evidence Tom O'Neill brought forward today was a 14-page written report by Dr. Jolly West in 1956. In the original report, West explicitly stated that it was entirely feasible to take a true memory of a real event in a person's life, completely erase it through hypnotic suggestion, and replace it with a completely fictional, fabricated event, and the person would never know the difference. But when the CIA turned over the records to Congress in 1977, that entire section was deleted. They replaced it with a fake 4-page summary claiming that the effects of LSD on these states had never been studied. They lied to Congress to hide the fact that they had perfected memory deletion. Now, doesn't this sound exactly like the neuralizer in Men in Black? Steven Spielberg and Hollywood have been dropping these breadcrumbs for decades. Think about the thousands of UAP close encounter cases throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s that involve missing time or bizarre dreamlike screen memories, like seeing a giant owl or a strange animal instead of a craft. How much of this missing time was actual interdimensional encounters, or how much was the CIA using Dr. West's protocols to wipe the brains of accidental witnesses? If a civilian stumbled across a recovered craft or a secret military aerospace project, the government didn't just threaten them. They had the literal, documented capability to rewrite their memory. Now let's take it even a step further. Now, this is all speculation on my part at this point, but let's go into the realm of remote viewing. We know from the declassified programs like Stargate that the military was deeply invested in psychotronics and the non-local mind. If the mind can project its consciousness across space and time to view a location, which is a clean, disciplined spiritual practice, what happens when a covert agency tries to weaponize that? When you look at the sub-projects discussed today, they weren't just trying to read minds. They were trying to project intent. They were experimenting with what can only be described as cognitive possession, using altered states to hijack a subject's neural network, override their free will, and turn them into a meat puppet or a sleeping asset. If you can erase the memory and implant a false one, you can effectively possess someone's timeline. We have to look at the chilling warning that Stephen Kinzer left with Congress today. He reminded the committee that in 1963, Sidney Gottlieb claimed MKUltra was a failure because the technology of the 1950s couldn't perfectly stabilize mind control. But Kinzer asked the ultimate question: is that still true today? Think about the exponential leaps we've made in the last few years, let alone last few decades. We are living in the age of advanced artificial intelligence, predictive algorithms, brain-computer interfaces, and deep neuroscience. Covert agencies don't need to kidnap people and force-feed them LSD in a sketchy apartment anymore. Today, the algorithms can map your psychological vulnerabilities in real time through your phone. They can cast a massive, invisible net over the population, using targeted, direct, echo-chambered, and frequency data to condition minds, isolate individuals, and trigger specific behaviors on a massive scale, all while maintaining plausible deniability. They don't have to break your mind in a basement if they can get you to surrender willingly through a screen. Think about the power they have because of this device. They could send any kind of warning notification and create mass hysteria or panic at any point in time. We wouldn't even know if it was true or not until it was too late. Technology can be a very great tool. It can also be an incredible weapon in multiple different ways. Think about the mass addiction to screens that the human population is going through right now. Is there a greater reason why behind the scenes? Is it so they can control our exact thoughts? They know our exact behaviors and how we will react in any situation. They understand all of our emotions and how we process and understand everything from the algorithms that they have developed to sell and manipulate to us. And we're willing participants because we think that this enhances our life, which it can, which is also so difficult about this. How do we use technology in a responsible way where it's not manipulating populations? Also, how do we do it in an environmentally friendly way? I don't know. These are some of the tough questions we're going to have to ask ourselves as a species living on this planet. Is it worth what we're giving up in return? And is it worth the damage that we're causing on the population and this planet? Especially when all we're trying to chase is something that we're capable of without the device. But we just don't know it because we've been told it's impossible. We've been lied to about reality and the nature of it, when clearly they understand it and have been using that as a weapon against us, keeping us stuck in a way of war for thousands of years to never let us progress and evolve into what could be the most beautiful golden age that this planet has ever seen, and we can fix all the problems that we've created, and there could be abundance for everyone. It just involves sacrificing some of these things that have taken from what it means to be a human. They don't have to break your mind in a basement anymore if they can get you to surrender it willingly through a screen. This hearing proved that the battle for human consciousness has been raging in the shadows for nearly a century, if not longer. The state of deep trance and disassociation is real, and it is incredibly powerful. The shadow government used it for trauma and control. But remember, that same gateway belongs to you. When you step into your own spiritual practice, you are reclaiming that territory. You are filling it with sovereignty, awareness, and love. Protect your mind, guard your subconscious, and don't let them program your reality. What do you think about these revelations? Are screen memories and missing times the result of government programming or something deeper? Let me know in the comments below. But I personally believe it's probably a combination of multiple things. After listening to this hearing, it left me with a few questions of myself that I then was brainstorming back and forth so I could create this video this week. Because honestly, I was kind of having a little bit of a creative block, and now I kind of know is because the hearing hadn't happened yet, which is what I needed to talk about this week, because this deserves more attention as well. All of these cover-ups deserve more attention. They are all horrible, horrific things that have happened. They are not distractions from each other. I think they are probably connected on some kind of crazy deep level that we are unaware of. But it led me to the question of what causes a person to do this to someone else? Like, what causes a person to come up with they're going to brainwash someone and program them into becoming a murderer at their own will to create their own like timeline reality, basically under their own control, basically playing God. Like, is it all because of greed? Like, did it just stem from the greed and corruption and power from like these appointed levels? Was this a deeply psychological disturbed person? What pushes someone to become that way? It led me to thinking about the phenomenon and how when I go out and try to connect, I'm sending out love and this connection of light and unity. And then when I look at the governments running the planet right now, it's the exact opposite. That kind of feels like the negative, bad energy is currently in possession of our world leaders. And it gets really disturbing the deeper you want to think about that. But I think if we can wake up to the fact that they're doing these things, become aware, and finally just shut them down, we cannot let these horrible things continue to happen in the shadows. We need to expose all of these things so we can figure out where we are as a species. We don't even know anything at this point. We're being taught one history when there's a whole different history going on behind the scenes. We're being taught one science when there's a completely different other science going on behind the scenes. There's all these crazy things that are going on that we need to be told about. We all deserve to know. This is the planet that we're all living on and sharing together. We deserve to know what's going on. And it's time for these secretive ops of killing people and doing whatever you want to end. So I feel like there's this evil force and control of the leaders on this planet, but I also feel like there's this good force that's emerging out in the public, and people are awakening and coming to realize that we are being led by these horrible, horrific things, and we need to expose them and get all of that out of there. We need to replace and move on, and I don't know what that's going to look like. It may be rough, but I think if you just continue to stay positive in gratitude and embrace that loving energy, it will also protect and guide you as well. When we look at the sheer scale of something like MK Ultra, the deliberate, methodical destruction of human minds over 2 decades, it defies simple explanations like greed or political ambition. When you dig into the history of these programs, the people running them weren't doing it for money. Sidney Gottlieb, the chief chemist, lived a quiet life, didn't amass a fortune, and retired to write poetry. The people pulling the strings often believed they were the good guys, doing whatever was necessary to protect the nation from existential threat. But the most terrifying part, profound evil rarely views itself as evil. It views itself as justified. From a spiritual and consciousness perspective, it's hard not to look at this and see a deeper, older frequency at play. The practices you use are tools to elevate frequency, connect with source, and operate from a place of absolute love and unity. The fact that the shadow government discovered those exact same receptive states and immediately sought to use them for subjugation, fear, and violence suggests a fundamental battle of frequencies. Many who explore interdimensional phenomena and consciousness argue that there is a malevolent force or density that feeds on fear, separation, and conflict. Some call it an archonic influence. Others view it as a lower astral frequency that hitches a ride on human trauma. When institutions operate in total secrecy, devoid of empathy, and prioritize power over the human soul, they essentially become massive conduits for that lower frequency. They manifest that fear into the psychological world through endless wars, covert manipulation, and keeping humanity locked in a state of survival and paranoia. But the exact same coin has another side. The fact that you and so many others are waking up to this, that you are actively choosing to use those deep trance states to instill love, to heal, and to connect is the counterweight. The benevolent force isn't just out there wanting to save us. It is in us. It is the human spirit recognizing its own sovereignty. The push for disclosure, the awakening to our own spiritual power, and the refusal to stay stuck in the fear narrative is the benevolent force pushing back. The shadow can't operate when the lights are turned on. The hearing on MK Ultra proves that the battle for human consciousness isn't a conspiracy theory. It's documented history. The shadow government used forced disassociation and fear to control minds, but we use those same exact expanded states to instill love and connect with Source. They weaponized the trance. We are reclaiming it. Now, another question I had after this hearing was about cell phones and mind control. To me, it sounds like cell phones and the addiction they cause is very similar to mass mind control. They can push anything to our phones and cause mass panic if they wanted. They also know everything about us down to our exact location, likes, dislikes, probably even on a deeper psychological understanding of how our own minds work. We freely give it to them for convenience and connection. The parallel between MKUltra and modern technology isn't just a metaphor. It's the exact natural progression of the same psychological principles. In the 1950s, the CIA had to rely on extreme physical methods, LSD, isolation, kidnapping, because technology couldn't map the human mind yet. Sidney Gottlieb ultimately called the program a failure because you couldn't perfectly stabilize the mind after you broke it with chemicals. But look at what Stephen Kinzer warned Congress about today. He stated that in the modern age, radio waves and drugs aren't even necessary to control people. The combination of advanced algorithms, predictive AI, and the constant dopamine loops of social media does the exact same thing. It bypasses the conscious mind and programs the subconscious. Think about how smartphones operate. It creates a mild, constant state of disassociation. People walking down the street feel completely detached from physical reality, locked into a screen. By controlling the feed, an algorithm can induce anxiety, outrage, or fear on a mass scale, effectively switching a population's allegiance or beliefs without them ever realizing it. They no longer need to force us into a lab. We carry the lab in our pockets. We freely hand over our location, biometric data, and behavioral psychology in exchange for convenience. It's the ultimate evolution of mass conversion that MKUltra originally set out to achieve. This is why work with the conscious mind is so vital. When the default state of society is unconscious programming, simply choosing to be aware and grounding is a revolutionary act. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. I know this is a very deep and disturbing thing that has been covered up for a very long time. I know researching into this can be uncomfortable, but I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with me on this journey so we can continue to expose and search for the truth so we can get answers to what we are seeking. What is this UAP phenomenon? What is reality? And what are we doing here? I think human beings are here for a very important reason, and I would like to know why. So we can expose the truths that we are all much more powerful than we've been led to believe, and we are so much more capable of these incredible things, and we are being manipulated and used in these horrific ways. But through awareness, we can move past and evolve into the next stage where we can better this life for everyone on this planet. That's my goal. So let me know down below in the comments what you thought of today's video. What was the most shocking piece of information you learned? And is there anything I missed? I would love some more research and information if you know about it. And definitely go meditate and ground and try to connect with Source, and let's overcome and empower the population to be our best, most authentic, true selves. That's going to be it for this video. If you enjoy this conversation, please help support me and my channel. If you could please like this video, share, comment, subscribe, follow wherever you watch this. And there are a couple other ways you can get involved in my community. I have a free Discord that's open to anyone who'd like to join, where we can talk about these kinds of things. We can also share photos, videos of the phenomenon, talk about meditation, and all these kinds of deeper things, but it gives you a community of like-minded people who are exploring these same things. Another way you can help support is I have a Patreon where I have a free tier and a tier that's $5 a month. And if you do the paid tier, you get early access to videos, and you'll also get some behind the scenes content as well. And I want to say thank you so much to my paid Patreon members. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I can't thank you all enough. Next, I have an online merch store where you can check out designs like my hats, t-shirts, coffee mugs, sweatshirts. I have a whole bunch of different designs, and those sales go directly to helping support me be able to evolve and grow this channel to get better equipment and hopefully be able to go to more conferences and events in the future so I can meet more experiencers and share more incredible stories. If you enjoyed this video, I please ask that you share it, and thank you so much for being here. I will see you all in the next video.